Greetings, everybody, and welcome once again to the Rec Poker Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fredlund, delighted to bring you another week. This week, we're doing some Q&A with rec players with a variety of experience. I asked them to submit some audio files answering these questions. How has your game improved? What areas do you want to improve? What are some common mistakes that you see recreational players make all the time? How do you improve your game, and what is your ultimate goal? So we're going to hear from a number of people, everything from somebody who's never played a casino game all the way to somebody who plays 2-3 times a week in the casino. So I think you'll enjoy this, especially if you're a newer player. You can really start to understand some of the common themes that recreational players are seeing as we all try to improve our game. Before we get into that, I first of all want to thank Running Aces, who is the official sponsor of the Rec Poker Podcast, and I also want to give a plug for All In for Africa. We have our 7th one coming up October 28th at Running Aces. We raise money for Africa, and it's a great time. Half the money that's paid in goes to the prize pool, but then we also supplement it with a bunch of bounties, and it usually ends up being an overlay in terms of total amount paid out. So please put that on your calendar, show up. It's a great time. If you want to be a bounty and you want to be on the flyer, we usually have like 30 different bounties on our flyer that we put out in advance. I'm in the process of putting that together now, so please let me know if you want to be a bounty or if you want to donate a prize that could be used as a bounty. We'd love to continue to build this thing. We've raised about $65,000, $70,000 over the first 6, and the impact is just staggering. I've had a chance to go to Rwanda 4 times to see what we're doing over there, and I tell you what we do with All In for Africa and the money that we raise is literally changing and saving lives. So thanks so much for that. So now we're going to get into the Q&A with the recreational players. I'm first going to have each of them briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll get into each question and have all of them answer that question and then move on to the next question. So hopefully you can get a good feel for some of the common themes that are emerging and how us recreational players are thinking about the game.
My name is Stacey Nelson. I started playing Hold'em just a few years ago. I've just gotten into the tournament play, haven't done any cash. Mostly do buy-ins of $150 or less, and I try to play about once a month or somewhere in that area.
Hello, this is Taylor Maas for the Rec Poker Podcast. I primarily play low-stakes online tournaments, but will find my way out to my local card room to play a mid-stakes live tournament as well.
Hi, my name is Steve Olson. I am a part-time poker player. I play as much as my job will allow. I split my time between probably 70% tournaments, 30% cash. I generally play at Running Aces. I also play at Canterbury, although Running Aces is closer to my house, so that's where I find myself most often.
Hi, my name is Wylie. I play poker about 6 to 12 times a month. I generally play at Running Aces in the double stack games, and then a few smaller tournaments, typically at Grand Casino Hinckley. I split my time in games about 90% tournaments and about 10% cash.
Yeah, hi, my name is Steve Fredlund, and I play regularly, probably a couple of times a week on average, sometimes more, sometimes less. I almost exclusively play live tournaments. I don't play online, and I don't play cash, and typically I'm playing at Running Aces, sometimes Grand Casino Mille Lacs, or home games.
Hi, my name is Chris Gorton. I play in 2 different leagues with high school and college buddies and some of their acquaintances and some people from work, and a work group that plays 2 times a year.
The question is, how has your game improved over the last few years? The question implies that my game has improved, and I guess I believe it has. I've been tracking my results a little bit, and it has improved. One of the questions here was mistakes I don't make as often. One of the first things that comes to my mind is I don't assume everybody's playing my style. I was pretty tight and really only willing to make moves or make big bets if I had a really strong hand. And I kind of, at the beginning, assumed that's what everybody did. They would bet big when you had it, and you wouldn't bet when you don't. And I've kind of moved out of that a little bit and understand that there are different types of players. Some people just like that, and a number of others that don't play like me. So I have to look to other means to evaluate whether they may have the hand or not. That's one of the areas I've found since I took a trip to Vegas and played several days in a row. Really felt that helped me evaluate people's hand ranges and getting a quick feel for a lot of players. There's still some players at every table that I can't really get a read on, but if I can get a read on 5, 6, or 7 out of the table, that gives me a good, comfortable feeling, and then try to avoid the people that I really don't have a good read on, or at least know that I don't have a good read on them and take that into account when I'm playing a hand against them. Over the past couple of years, I've tried to watch other players and study and do a lot of discussing with other poker players. And I've tried to do what I've referred to as trying to add tools to my toolbox, because I felt very limited at the beginning. So I've just been trying to slowly but surely try to add a tool like a 3-bet or say a button move to steal the blinds or something like that. I wouldn't have even known to try these things, didn't know people did these things a couple years ago. So I've been just trying to add things like that. I call them tools to my toolbox. The one I'm working on now is trying to find situations where I think other people are putting themselves at risk, either being too tight or way too loose or too aggressive, and find a way to take advantage of these situations.
First off, I want to say that this question is ever-changing in my personal answer. I feel like my game is constantly evolving, and what I think may be a strength at one point in time, if I revisit it a year, 2 years, whatever it may be later, I may look back and say I was not playing optimally. With that being said, right now I think the biggest strength in my game is my pre-flop decisions. I feel like I make good decisions as it relates to what should my opening ranges be pre-flop from different positions, and also what should my 3-betting, calling, etc. strategy be with each specific hand. I took a lot of time kind of breaking down what hands I'm playing, what hands are causing me trouble, and looking at what positions I'm opening them from. So myself personally, I really tightened up my early position ranges. So when I'm under the gun, I'm not playing as wide of a range as I used to. And then also from later positioning, I'm opening up my ranges. So when I'm in position on the button or in the cutoff, I'm taking some of those hands that I would have been folding previously, and I'm actually 3-betting some of those, or just calling if I think that hand can flop well versus my opponent's range. And that actually gets into the second part of where I think my game has improved, and that's hand ranging my opponents as well as my own personal range. I think prior I would continuation bet a lot and not pay much attention to the flop that I'm betting, as well as where's my opponent and what might they be calling pre-flop with, and then seeing on a specific flop. So by this I mean if there is what we would call a wet board, and where my opponent called my initial raise from will make a big consideration in terms of my continuation bet. And all that comes down to hand ranging and what I think my opponent is calling me with, and that allows me to make continuation bets better or avoid losing money on continuation bets when I should not have put out the initial bet. But like I led off with initially, I may make some changes to my game in the future. I may study certain things about what I'm doing currently and look back at this time and say I'm not doing stuff perfectly and I need to make a change, and it was actually a leak in my game that I needed to plug. So I think this is something that always gets changed, but as of right now, those are my main strengths in my game.
Specifically referring to tournament play, I think the biggest improvement has just come with time and really getting to know the players that you're playing against. What are their tendencies? What are their betting habits? That's just been an invaluable source of knowledge for me.
I think I would say that I've learned the value of position in poker. What it means as a hand plays out, post flop, and just that situational awareness. Being able to act last. It's something that seemed like a struggle for me early on, and I just sort of played the big hands whenever I got them, and I didn't use my position to attack other players. That's something that I've gotten a lot better at over the years. Another place where I think I've kind of made a lot of improvements is sort of not painting myself kind of into that corner. There's just a lot of times, especially when you're using your position, where you can check to your opponent and you have showdown value. And that was something I think early on too. You sort of get built with this mentality of, I have to bet. And the reality is sometimes all of a sudden you get check raised, and what do? Or you overcommit your stack. Suddenly you have 50% of your stack in the middle, and you're facing a check raise or an all-in, and you're sort of left with no options. And I think that was a place years ago I used to find myself a lot more often, and now I'm kind of smart enough to not let that happen, aware of what other players are capable of, and just try to be, like I say, more aware of each situation as it comes. And the one big thing I think I've learned over the years is when I make a correction to my game, when I study the things I do and really think about it, I make much smaller adjustments than I did early on. Early on, I could show up to a game one week and ultra passive, and then the next week, bet and fire away like a maniac. And there was kind of no rhyme or reason to it. I was trying to make these adjustments to change my game in a way that I thought would be useful. And, what I finally realized was recognize things I'm doing wrong or could use improvement and just make really small adjustments. And that actually has helped. It's helped my game to kind of come into focus. I notice I make, much deeper runs and far fewer mistakes, which ultimately is kind of my goal. And so, those were big challenges for me, and things that I've done very, very well to kind of, just get better at.
Over the past few years, my game has improved in a number of ways. I think it's weird, but it's improved both in terms of aggression and in terms of patience. So I'm playing much fewer hands than I used to. I'm being more patient, waiting for those good spots. But when I have those spots, I'm willing to play them more aggressively. I'm willing to 3-bet more. I'm doing more of those things to try to build chips while I wait for those premium hands or wait for those premium situations. I think in the past I would be patient, but then I could get blinded off and I'd be really card dependent. And now I've figured out a way to add some tools to my toolbox as a way of building chips. Things like punishing the limpers, things like re-raising, squeezing, check raising flops and turns. Some of those things where you got to be careful with them. You can lose a lot of chips, but they're also great ways to pick up chips while you're waiting for those premium hands and those premium situations. So I think that combination of being more patient and being more willing to put chips at risk in situations that I think are good have really helped me grow in my game. And one of the symptoms of that, one of the things that I use to monitor that is looking at what my cash ratio is when I do cash. What I mean by that is the multiple of what I've received from payout divided by what I bought into the tournament for. So if you combine your in the moneyness percentages, that is how often do you cash, that's your in the money percentage, and you combine that with what's your multiple of return conditional upon when you do cash, that will get you to your ROI. So early when I started playing poker, I would have a really high in the money percentage. I might cash 20 or 25% of the tournaments I played, but my multiple was only 2 or 3x, meaning on average when I cashed, I was only getting 2 or 3 times my money back. So actually that results in being a losing player. And now what I've done is, even though my in the moneyness percentage has gone down a little bit, my factor, my multiple has gone up significantly every single year over the last 5 or 6 years. So I think adding aggression to my game, but not crazy aggression, has actually helped me increase my ROI significantly, even though I'm not cashing as often as I used to.
I think I've become a lot more patient and play fewer hands instead of getting bored or just trying to make things happen or thinking that so many hands have that so much more potential, especially in the case of like chasing straights or flushes. So much of the time before, even if there was a bunch of betting ahead of me, thinking, oh, there's just so much more. If I can hit that straight or flush, I'm going to get so much more out of it. But realizing now that you hit so seldom that's not a good way to go. I'm also more aware of my position. In the past, I actually used to think that the earlier position was more powerful because I get to act first, and that I wanted to bet because I had a certain hand. But if I was in later position, 2 or 3 other people had bet and raised, then I wasn't able to. I'd get nervous about that same hand that I already had, instead of realizing that being in the later position actually gave me that information that maybe I shouldn't be playing those cards. Instead of thinking, well, if I was the first one to act, then I get to be the one betting and everybody's scared off of my hand. Also looking at being aware of the chip size, not only how many chips I have and how many big blinds that is, but also how big are the chip stacks of the people that are in the hand already. And then also looking at who's to act after me and how big are their chip sizes, etc. Also, I'm more willing to fold a hand when I think I'm behind, instead of just kind of playing along and continuing getting caught up in how many chips I already have in the pot and not wanting to lose those.
All right, we'll be right back with more questions right after this brief message. Running Aces Casino and Racetrack has the best poker room in Minnesota, featuring 24/7 promos on all cash poker games, including earning $2 per hour in comps, plus the most player-friendly tourney structures. Visit runaces.com for daily promotions and the tournament calendar. Running Aces Casino and Racetrack, the official sponsor of Rec Poker.
What are areas in my game I want to improve? I feel I've been playing pretty well lately, at least within my skill level. And I've found a couple tournaments that I've run into where I make one big mistake, where I just didn't think things through well enough and made a big move. And looking back in retrospect, thinking I could have taken a little more time to think through the situation and really gotten away from that hand, or maybe vice versa. I really probably should have pushed hard on something and that type of a thing. There's a couple times I just feel like I played really pretty solid, but a couple key areas cost me big, and I really didn't have to make that big of a play at that time. So I'm kind of looking to avoid the fatal mistakes. You're going to make a lot of little mistakes along the way, but if I can avoid the fatal mistakes, keep me in the tournaments and give me a chance at the end. Right now I'm playing a lot of straightforward poker. I'm winning most of the hands that I should win because I have the best hand, and I'm folding a lot of the hands where I don't have the best hand. And that's fine, but right now I'm kind of looking at some strategies to try to find a way to tip a couple more of those in my favor, where I don't have to always have the best hand to win. So I don't know exactly what those are, but that's kind of where I'm searching for right now. I'm also looking for a couple strategies that can put pressure on people. Basically, it's looking at doing to other people what I hate when they do to me. Things like 3-betting when I'm betting light, raising light, calling me 2 streets and then pounding the river hard. Things like that put a lot of pressure on that they may or may not have any hand at all. I'm not sure, but it really puts a lot of pressure on me and puts me in an uncomfortable spot.
I could say essentially everything. I'm a recreational poker player. I don't play that much. I think every aspect of my game could use improvement, and I could improve something. But as we get into that, I think there's also areas that need more attention than others. In my previous discussion, I talked about where has my game improved, like what are my strengths, and a lot of my answers were structured around pre-flop and also hand ranging my opponent. When it comes to where do I want to improve, I really think I need to improve my post-flop play. So I feel very confident in how I take my pre-flop actions. I don't ever question what I'm doing. On the flop, I rarely get to a point where I'm unsure of what to do. But then the turn and river comes around, and whether I'm trying to get value out of my opponent or I'm trying to avoid giving value to my opponent, all those different types of things. Should I be calling? Should I be raising? What is a proper check calling, check raising, check folding, bet folding, all those different types of things. I'm constantly questioning myself on, am I making the right decision? I think those are areas where a lot of people can see improvement, especially in terms of the tournaments that I like to play. I like to play online tournaments, especially turbos, stuff that can get over with quick. I'm the type of person where if I play a tournament, I don't want to be spending my whole day doing it. I do it for fun. Likewise with live tournaments, a lot of those structures are on the turbo side, where after you've played for 2-3 hours, all of a sudden everyone has less big blinds, and when that happens, all the action is essentially done either pre-flop or on the flop, and players don't get that experience of turn and river play, and it's tough to improve on that when you're not seeing those types of plays. So that's definitely an area for my improvement. However, it's something that I can kind of mask by playing these turbos, whether online or live.
My biggest thing that I'm trying to work on right now is my temperament. Not getting too high, not getting too low at the poker table. I tend to get a little bit emotional sometimes, and so that is the area that I'm really trying to work on right now. Got a little bit of Philhelmuth in my game when it comes to that stuff, and I'm really working hard to control it and to eradicate that from my game.
I would say one thing that I find that I do constantly when I reassess a game, I just feel like I leave too much money on the table. I leave a lot of value. I don't always get max value from the hands that I play. It's something I've been working on for actually quite a while. And I notice that it gets better and better, but still just one of those spots where I think I sort of let opponents off the hook a little bit, not really getting the value from them that I can or that I should, and playing a hand well, and trying to make the right strategic play against an opponent is good. But if I do all that correctly and still don't get the max value, that's just the same as giving away chips. It's just a leak in my game, and something that I constantly have to work on. Another thing that I would really like to improve on is my button play. I've learned over the last several years really the value of playing your positions well. But for some reason, I get a little bit in lockdown mode, I think, when I kind of get my button, which is a place where I should definitely be attacking more. I sort of have it in my head, this mentality that, if a pot is just limped into the button or even unopened straight to the button, and I find myself there, many times I think, this is a terrible spot in a way to raise because it looks so sneaky and it looks like such a steal spot. And even though that's true, still playing that position is important. And I think there's certainly a fine line between being just a madman in that position and, constantly getting, chips and too many chips in is obviously a bad thing, but certainly something where I need to pick up my aggressive side a little bit and be willing to attack those blinds and antes certainly more than I do. Definitely a weak spot in my game. I'm always reading, trying to find, kind of the best balance that I can use from that particular spot. And mistakes that I make, typically, one thing that I tend to do, especially as I feel that I'm improving in certain areas, I then give my opponents the same credit a lot of times to think, well, this is where I've improved to, so this is where this person's probably there as well. And sometimes I just don't ask myself, the question about an opponent, is my opponent capable of, thinking at maybe a next level on a hand? You find yourself in that, well, they know that I know that they know this is a good bluff spot or steal spot, and so they would bet, and this is a good spot for me to call. And the reality is, a lot of times I play opponents. I find myself in hands with people who just they can't think that way, and they don't think that way. Sometimes I make that mistake, and it's just another place where sometimes I leave a little more money on the table that I really shouldn't, or even find myself, maybe dumping a few chips to somebody where if I really would have thought it out, I would have maybe just made a fold to someone as opposed to, overthinking my opponent.
I still have a tendency to punt off chips, to go into desperation mode too early. I think I see the pros and I read the books and they talk about shoving with 15 or 20 big blinds. And I think that's appropriate for some of the tournaments that they're playing where you've got long levels and deep structures and all of those things. I think I tend to take that into my games that running aces or Grand Casino where the average stack might be 8 or 10 big blinds. And so if I have 6 or 7 big blinds, I don't have many big blinds, but I've got a lot compared to the rest of the field, and I've got a significant amount of equity in that stack, and so I've got to learn how to play more patient, wait for better spots. I'm still not afraid to put my chips in the middle, but I do need to figure out a way to not punt off stacks. And the other thing I need to improve on is almost invariably in tournaments where I fail, there's that one hand where I try to run a bluff, and I kind of get married to the bluff. And obviously, sometimes it works, but those where I don't, it's where I'm running. I 3-bet pre-flop with not a great hand, and then I continuation bet when it checked to me, and then I raised on the turn or whatever it is, and I kind of get myself in so deep on a hand that really didn't have much equity because my read was I could get my opponent to fold. Well, of course, like I said, sometimes that happens, but other times it doesn't, and I end up losing a half to 2/3 of my chips without really a chance to win the hand. And so I need to at least continue to noodle that and figure out what's appropriate in those situations.
Hoping to be more aggressive and work on building my stack size versus having that focus on more of not losing the chips that I have. I tend to get a lot more nervous and try not to bet is large, and then when people are coming up over the top of me, I back off or get worried, and then even though I don't lose as many chips, I don't have that potential of building my stack size either, and realizing that sometimes they may be just bluffing me off, or that when I have a decent hand, not always think, oh, well, I don't have the nuts, and therefore they probably have me beat. I also want to focus more on the stack size, my stack size in general, and how many big blinds I have, and then also the stack size of the other people at the table in relation to mine, and especially anybody that's in the pot with me, and just trying to use that as an advantage, or knowing I have the other people covered or not, or I could end up losing my whole stack, or who I want to play against. I'd also like to try to figure out and be able to focus on the body language of the other players, and then trying not to be giving away anything of myself. But in general, I have a harder time trying to keep track of what, if, not necessarily even just tells, but if somebody seems nervous this particular hand or not, or excited, and then also just in general people's playing styles, to try to put somebody into a more of a category of, are they aggressive, or are they loose, do they bluff a lot, and just trying to keep track of that from player to player, or from game to game, because I play with a lot of the same people, and seeing if that can help my game overall as well. And then lastly, one of the things I know I don't do so well with is I have a tendency to show my hands at the end, whether somebody paid to or not, and so I know I'm giving away a lot of additional information each time I do that, and so I'm really working on trying to focus on not showing my hand unless it goes to the showdown, and I need to do that to win that particular pot.
What are the most common mistakes that I see less experienced players repeatedly making? As I think about this question, I think to the number of hands people play. It seems like people play way too many hands, which means they're playing a lot of hands out of position. And I see them get into trouble. They'll win a number of pots, but when they run into good players, it seems like I watch these good players just take advantage of them. I also see a lot of players just being, I guess, what I'd call way too predictable. They do the same thing over and over. You can tell pretty early on that they love their aces, ace regs they'll play. You can tell that they're going to call almost any pre-flop just to see a flop, and then if they don't have it, they'll fold, and if they do have it, they'll bet, and so they're real easy to play against post-flop. So being predictable, it would be another thing I see a number of inexperienced players do.
So I'm going to start off with a cautious disclaimer that says there's a lot of things that I do that more experienced players would say is a mistake, and I'm commonly doing it. So I'm not trying to pick on less experienced players than myself, but trying to shine some light on where they could use some improvement. So the first common mistake that I see people making is limping pre-flop. I think this is a huge mistake, especially when someone is the first to enter the pot. So by this, players have the action on them. There's no raises in front of them, and they decide they're just going to make the initial call of the big blind. I'm of the school of thought that if you're the first one to put chips into the pot, it should be a raise. You should make other people make decisions off of your bet, because they can always fold and you just win right there without seeing a flop. I'll put a small disclaimer that if people are limping in front of you, it sometimes does make sense to limp behind if you don't want to bloat the pot. If you have seen a player limp and then call a raise, and you don't have a hand that you want to play a big pot with, but you'd rather play a small pot with. An example may be pocket sixes. on the button with 2 limpers in front of you, if you have information that says if you raise there and those 2 limpers are still going to play the hand with you, it doesn't make sense to open with a raise there. The second thing is hand ranging and opening of hands. So I think a lot of people think just statically about what hands they're going to be opening with. And it really depends on what position you're in. So ace 10 suited is a good hand to open with from the cutoff, but it might not be the best hand to open with under the gun. And it all depends on table dynamics, but just at a flat level, even playing surface, in a vacuum, whatever you want to say, opening ace 10 suited under the gun is very different than opening ace 10 suited from the cutoff.
Number one is they're just playing too many hands. Not all hands play themselves, obviously, and many inexperienced players just don't have the skill to playing a lot of hands. They're playing hands out of position, and the ultimate result of that is they just tend to bleed chips. I also see them really giving their hands away a lot with the amounts that they're betting, really varying their bets, especially pre-flop, depending upon the strength or weakness of their hands, and giving a lot of things away that way.
Boy, there's lots of them. I would say first and foremost is they simply play too many hands. Too many hands and far too willing to call raises consistently. Nothing's going to crush a starting stack, like constantly being in hands and then, calling it off and have to fold after the flop. And I see it all the time. I see it every game I play. It almost doesn't even matter the size of the games that I play. I see it constantly. Another one is so often you'll suddenly see a player that lets themselves get drawn into just these monster pots really early in tournaments too. They might be 100 blinds deep and all of a sudden all their chips are in the middle. And obviously it generally happens against players who are far more experienced than they are, and they just allow themselves to be exploited by better players, and it's okay to find the fold button every once in a while. I think I think those are probably the most, and then probably the last one would be that they just will open limp way too often. I'm a firm believer in, if you're going to be in a hand, you should be raising. I'll watch players that'll limp 4 hands in a row and then someone will raise and they'll be blown off their hand. They have to fold pre-flop, and then the 5th hand will be dealt out, and once again they'll limp straight into the pot, and you just think, all those chips that they're just giving away freely. Just a terrible thing to do to a starting stack of chips. So
I still continue to see a lot of people limping a lot of pots. I see that happening all the time where there's limp. And frankly, in some of those tournaments, I pick up a lot of chips just by raising in late position over the top of them. So say there's 3 limps at 1 big blind each. I go to 8 big blinds, and almost always I get folds all the way around. And so I just picked up 5, 5.5, 6 big blinds, which is fantastic. And in a tournament that's as shallow as the ones I play, that's often 10 to 20% improvement in my stack. And often, and then when I get called, somebody limp calls me. I mean, if they limp re-raise me, I think they got a monster and they're trying to be tricky. If they limp call, they're just being stubborn with pocket 4s or ace jack or something like that. And 2/3 of the time or more, I'm going to be able to raise or bet on the flop and push them off. And now instead of picking up 3 or 4 or 5 big blinds, I pick up 13 big blinds. And so I see that happening quite a bit where people are limping and then they're limp calling out of position. Those things are pretty significant. I still see a fair amount of people raising too small when they raise. Like, for example, there's 3 limps and then somebody raises, they double it, or they even go to 3 times, which is just not going to accomplish what they're hoping to accomplish, which I'm not sure if they know what they're trying to accomplish. I'd always be curious to know, are you raising that to try to get action? Are you raising it to build a pot? Are you raising it to try to get folds? What's actually happening? Because in that situation, you're just not going to get people to fold their marginal hands, which is maybe what you want. And if you have a big hand, you're going to end up playing it against 4 or 5 people. So I think that's another significant mistake that they make. I see people getting married to top pair way too much. Even top pair with an ace kicker, people will end up throwing 100 big blinds into a pot when they just have to be beat. But even worse than that, I see people with, say, like queen jack, and there's a jack on the flop, and people just get married to it, and they're playing it 3 or 4 handed, and somebody has king jack or ace jack or pocket queens or some 2 pair or something, and people give a lot of chips away with what ends up being a marginal hand. So I think those are pretty big mistakes.
First off, it seems to me like there's a number of people out there that play way too many hands, and they have this idea that any 2 cards can win, or that they can outplay everybody else at the table, that they're good enough. And in general, I think it backfires on them. And then when they are playing hands, they play to the end, even if they didn't hit on the flop, or they have other people playing against them that are betting and raising big, and they have the middle pair or something that they haven't really got a good hand, but they don't actually back out, and they end up putting a lot of chips into the pot, and so they lose. I also see a lot of people that panic too early when they get chip stack starts to get low. So they're going all in with quite a few big blinds, or they're going all in with pretty much nothing in a position just because they think that's their only choice, instead of realizing how many free hands they have yet before they're even in the small blind again, or just trying to build their stack back up. If they have a bad beat, they lose a bunch of chips. It seems like they try to bet right away. In the next few hands, they end up betting really large to try to get those chips back, instead of just waiting patiently for a good hand again or the right spot. I also see a lot of people that play this pot committed, and even when they have nothing, if somebody makes a smaller bet or compared to the pot size, they have this idea that, well, I gotta call here just because I'm pot committed. I already have so many chips in. But if you have nothing, to me it doesn't make any sense to keep chasing after something, or just adding chips if you know you're beat already. And then just in general, if they don't realize that they have the nuts, and they're not taking advantage of that fact, or the opposite is having 2 pair or something, and not realizing that there's straight and flush possibilities out there on the board, and not seeing that you could be beaten in other ways.
All right, we'll be right back with more questions right after this brief message. Running Aces Casino and Racetrack has the best poker room in Minnesota, featuring 24/7 promos on all cash poker games, including earning $2 per hour in comps, plus the most player-friendly tourney structures. Visit runaces.com for daily promotions and the tournament calendar. Running Aces Casino and Racetrack, the official sponsor of Rec Poker.
What are the things that I do to improve my game? I've done a little reading, but I find it very difficult to read poker books for any length of time. I've done some listening to some books on tape. That's a little easier in some ways, but in some ways, when you don't have the hands that they're talking about in front of you, I found that to get difficult too. Some books are much easier than others. If they're talking theory, I can listen to that. If they're talking specific hands, that gets difficult to listen to. Probably the biggest thing I've done to improve my game is to talk poker with people that want to talk poker, even the people that are at my level of play or below or slightly above. just to talk it out and see somebody make some plays, or just talk to them about what they were thinking in a hand. That type of thing has just really helped me over the long run.
This is a question that I wish I could answer more in depth. I wish I did more reading of poker books. I wish I listened to more podcasts. I wish I read more blogs. The truth is, I don't do a lot of that, but I do a little bit of all of those things. So first, I'm subscribed to 3 different podcasts that I tend to listen to while I'm at work, which isn't the best way of trying to improve your game, but it's better than nothing. A lot of the time it's when I'm doing work and it's a voice in the background, but if I'm thinking intently about something, I'm not pausing the podcast to not miss something. I may miss some pieces of information or discussions on certain things, and it's not the best way of learning from that aspect. Also, I do tend to go to forums and just review hands and people's thoughts on different hands. So 2plus2 has great forums for that. There is also the subreddit of poker, and although the information there is less valuable than I would say you would find on 2plus2, you can still get input of how other people would view certain hands, why they'd make certain decisions, and those types of things. Books, I like to read poker books, but I'm not the most dedicated reader there is. So I really have to force myself to sit down, read a book, and for the Rec Poker, we're doing the book study of Jonathan Little's Secrets of Professional Tournament Poker. And it's one thing to just read the book, but what I'm trying to do is take notes as I'm going through, figure out where Jonathan Little is saying one thing about his game or how he suggests people play, and where I take a different approach, and try and figure out why that is and what's his reasoning behind it, and what I would stand to improve or lose if I would make this change to my game. There's no one way to play poker correctly, and I think that is also important to think about when you're trying to improve your game. You can try and mimic one person's style or how they play, but that might not be the exact style that you're best at. There are very aggressive poker players, there are very tight poker players, and you personally aren't going to be best served as being a aggressive poker player and not a tight poker player, or a tight poker player and not an aggressive poker player. So you have to figure out the style that works for you and be able to adapt your game to improve the best for yourself.
I've got a few books that I've read, and I kind of keep those, and I go back and I reread them. And it's amazing how often, you'll pick up new things that, completely I've missed or went over my head the first 1, 2, or 3 times reading it. Watch videos on YouTube and really just play and pay attention and putting everything in your memory and filing that stuff away to, break out at a later date. I also have a couple close friends. One's a real good cash player. Another one's a great tournament player. And, we just talk all the time. And anything I can do to sponge up their experience and their lessons, I'm all for.
Well, I have to start out by saying Rec Poker, right? Listen to, all these really great tips and pointers that we get from our great Minnesota poker community, our pros, our semi-pros, and our rec players. Super helpful always. My personal favorite way, other than rec poker, is just individual discussion. I like to go over hand scenarios with kind of my inner circle, and I get approached actually quite often. People that know that I play want to ask, what would I do in a situation, and just hearing other people talk about situations that they've been in, kind of really helps me to develop, maybe new and different ways of thinking about a hand or the way it should be played. I certainly do, a little bit of reading. I certainly read all kinds of different blogs online. I have a few poker books on my shelf as well. But I really love the personal, just discussing it with other players of all different ranges, those that are better than me, those that, maybe are a little less experienced than myself, and sort of just see all the viewpoints and be able to put together kind of this complete picture of, just hand scenarios and what I would do, or, maybe what the right course of action would be in any given situation. So, those are kinds of the things I do to improve. Of course, I do my own self hand analysis from tournaments and games that I play. I keep a journal. I keep accurate records of everything that I'm in, and sort of analyze what games I'm playing the best in, maybe what games I'm not doing that well in, and what adjustments can be made, or maybe certain things should just be taken out of my tournament schedule and rotation. So that's kind of the things I do to sort of help myself improve.
Well, honestly, I started the Rec Poker podcast in part because I wanted to have something that would allow me to talk to the great players in the state of Minnesota, talk to other recreational players, force me to be thinking about poker more and more. So starting a poker podcast is good, but I'd say also listening to poker podcasts is good. I think the most value I ever get is talking to other players about situations or about theory or about strategy. Those things are fantastic. I don't do much with online videos. I don't do much with reading forums and blogs and those sorts of things. I think for me, it's much more. It has to be much more interactive than that. I think I'm a question asker by very nature. So when I can be with somebody where I can ask questions to clarify or say, yeah, but what about this, or what would influence that? Those are the things that really make me a better player. So I think you really need to look at how are you wired, what's your learning style, and then find things in those mediums that will accomplish that. So I would say really start with, in the past, how have you learned about things, whether it's on the job or other things? In what ways have you learned about things the best? And then look for those things in the poker sphere and go from there.
So some of the things I do to improve my game is just to try to play whenever I can. In general, the two leagues that I'm in are over the fall and during the winter time. And the group that plays at work a couple times a year is usually once in the fall and once in the spring. So during the summer, I feel like I forget a lot of this stuff, and that it's not like riding a bike, but the more you play and the more often you play, the more you're learning, and it's just keeping those ideas top of mind. I have read a couple of books, and I do take part in this Rec Poker podcast, and I listen to the other podcasts that I haven't been part of. I like to talk about hands with some of the other players, either while we're playing or over lunch type of thing. And I've actually tried to help teach some other coworkers how to play, or try to get my kids interested in playing. And I feel like by trying to teach somebody else, and they have all the questions, and trying to answer those questions or explain things, helps you think about it a little bit deeper and think about the reasoning, and just seeing other people's opinions or what they're thinking can be really helpful. Poker is one of these things that I don't feel like there is really a right or a wrong, and there's so many different opinions and ideas out there. It's really good to listen to somebody else talk through what they would do in a particular hand and why, not just trying to memorize that I do this or that, but having those reasons can help you in different hands that are similar but not exactly the same, where certain things might not correlate, even though you thought they're close. But there might be, because of the reason behind something, you can realize that, no, I don't want to play this particular hand the same way. is that other one that was somewhat close.
What are my primary goals with poker? For me, Hold'em has provided a non-physical way of being competitive. I grew up competitive all the way through high school and college, and it beat up the body a little bit. And when you're in their late 40s, that part is not as easy to find. So this is a great place to be competitive. So one of my main goals is to be competitive. That would be to win more than I lose. And then along with that, I would say just to improve. If I find that I'm not improving after another year or two, that's going to be disappointing. So I want to keep improving. Have a positive ROI would be a very concrete goal to have. Then the others that Stevie listed on the question sheet was to win a major tournament, to have fun, make good decisions. All those are good, but I think my primary goal is to be competitive, keep improving, and I really want to be a positive player, win more than I lose. I really love the social side of poker, and deep down that's an important part to me too. If it's not where I'm meeting with good people that I really enjoy, then I will probably give it up. But so far, the poker community's been fantastic. Been meeting some great people and having a good time. And so I guess having fun, being social is all part of it. But again, for me, if I'm losing money along the way, I can't keep doing this. So I need to have a positive ROI and have a good time and meet some great people.
And I think this is the easiest question for me to answer. I'm a very competitive person. I love playing games, sports, whatever it may be. And poker is just another one of those for myself. And when I'm in this competitive mindset, I'm trying to improve. So it could be the same thing with, softball or flag football, both things that I love to do, but I'm trying to get better at those things because winning is more fun than losing. And that's my goal with poker. I enjoy playing poker. I find it relaxing. I find it enjoyable. Steve always talks about his return on happiness, I believe is his acronym. But when you go out and play poker, are you enjoying yourself or is it not fun? And a lot of people have more fun when they're winning. I'm one of those people. So I'm trying to improve myself to get the most joy out of playing poker that I can. To do that, I'm trying to make good decisions. I find it easiest to go out and play poker when on my drive home, I am not questioning the decisions I made. So I want to be able to go to a poker tournament, be able to sit down at the table and not feel bad about decisions or start beating myself up about a decision that I made. A lot of people have the goal of having a positive ROI, or they want to make a profit, or they want to make X dollars in a year, and that's not me. I'm never going to be quitting my day job to play poker full time. So my main goal is to just have fun. Now, if that involves winning a big tournament or having a nice score, that's pretty nice. But right now, I'm just trying to enjoy myself when I go out and play poker.
Obviously, it's just, to improve, keep working hard on limiting my mistakes. Ultimately, would I love to be able to make a living at this game? I would. I don't think that's going to happen until the youngest is out of high school, but that would be my ultimate goal.
Well, I suppose the easy thing would be to say to be able to make a run to the World Series of Poker, win the main event, and become wealthy and famous in the poker world, and that would be awesome. But the truth is it's a game that I love, and I'm so completely I'm just taken by the game. If I'm not playing, I want to play. If I can bend somebody's ear and talk about it, I will. And more than the money, what I love about poker is the freedom to be able to, do the things that I want and kind of come and go as I please. that we're not offered by regular jobs. I do have a regular job, but obviously my goal would be the more I can put on poker, the happier and the better that would be for me. And mostly, my goal for those that see me around the poker rooms, especially like Aces and Grand Casino Hinckley, is I like to just be an ambassador for the game. I like to be a positive influence to other players. I feel like I've been part of the community for probably 15 years, getting more and more into it every year that goes by, and I just really want to be somebody who helps positively draw new people to the game, make it fun for them, and and just to help our game and our community grow. Because here in Minnesota we have a fantastic poker community, and I'm really happy and proud to be a part of it. And I'm always happy to support Steve with Rec Poker, and anything I can do just to be part of the poker community here in Minnesota is awesome to me, and I guess that's kind of my goals. So thanks very much.
I have a lot of goals with poker, or a lot of reasons why I play poker. Number one is I just love the game, and I love doing things that I love. It's my hobby. My hobby used to be fishing. My hobby used to be playing tennis, used to be playing basketball. Now my hobby is poker because it's something I just thoroughly enjoy. And I think part of what I enjoy about it is the competitive nature. I'm at a stage in my life where I'm not going to be able to do the same physical things I used to be able to do. And this gives me that competitive edge. I can go mano a mano, and I can take on all the guys and gals at the table and see who can come out on top. I mean, I recognize that there's luck and recognize there's variance, but I love trying to match wits with other people in this sort of a setting. But I'm also doing it from a social perspective. I love meeting all the people that I meet. I've met so many of you that are listening. I've become good friends with a lot of people simply because I started playing poker. So I love that. But ultimately, I do want to make money at this game. Now, I'm not ever planning on becoming a pro. I don't have that skill set. I don't want that volatility of income in my life. But I do want to make money. That's part of a measurement of how well am I playing, how good am I doing. And so it's all of those things. I'm doing it for fun, I'm doing it for competitiveness, but I track everything, and I want to do whatever I can to maximize my ROI and figure out how do I get to that place. It'd be great. I would love to someday win a fairly big tournament. At this point, it doesn't need to be a huge tournament, but something like one of the 280s at Running Aces, or even one of the deep stacks there. I've won a bunch of tournaments, but they're all sort of in that $100, $70 range, and those are good. Those are nice paydays. Those are I'm very proud of those. But I want to win a tournament, or at least run really deep, where I can look at the field and say, wow, that was a lot of really good players in that. I think something like the 6 Max tournament that I just played last year, I'm going to play again coming up. I finished 5th, and I was very proud of that. There's a really good field. Even though it was only like 72 players, it was still a very good field. And I think even winning something like that would have given me that confidence to know that I can play with the best of the best. I've run deep in a lot of good tournaments. I've final tabled, some big tournaments. I've got a $10,000 cash. But I feel like, in those critical situations, there's times where I lose races, but there's also times where I maybe overplay things. And so I want to continue to get that experience and get better. So when you talk about the goals, I want to have fun. I want it to be social. I want it to be competitive. I want to have a high ROI. But I ultimately would love to win a very significant, or, for me, a significant tournament, and kind of put myself on the poker map in the Minnesota scene beyond what I do with Rec Poker and All In for Africa. I think I've got respect of the poker world doing these things, and I've built a lot of relationships. But I would love to get to that stage where people say, okay, that's actually a very good player. He's not just a guy that's doing cool things with charity poker and a podcast. So that would be one of my goals as well.
So my primary goal is just to have fun, hang out with friends and coworkers. The one league I'm in, there's a number of high school and college friends that are in there, along with they're acquaintances that I've been in the league for a few years and gotten to know. So it meets every other week for 10 weeks, and it's a opportunity to get together with these friends and see them multiple times over the year. If we were just trying to get our families together, I'd maybe see them a couple of times a year. And so the longer I can last, the longer I get to hang out with them. And so it's not always about trying to build these huge stacks. It's just trying not to get knocked out right away. If I can break even for the league, that's great. If I'm down a little bit, it's cheap entertainment. And like I said, I get to hang out with a bunch of friends. And if you make a little bit of money, that's all the better. So, and actually the actuarial group from work that we play with, it's a $10 buy and $10 rebuy. So even if I end up rebuying, everybody brings snacks and stuff, and it's a cheap night of entertainment without a lot of stress or whatever, and doing something that I enjoy, because I like the strategy and the thinking about and playing the poker as well. But it's also a good opportunity, is something to do, to hang out and have fun outside of work, as with some of my coworkers. Someday I'd like to get to the point where I could go play a tournament at a casino and do okay, and have an idea of what I'm doing and learn the lingo, etc., and not feel so out of place. But right now I don't really have a whole lot of time for that kind of thing, with having the 3 kids that are fairly active as well. And so being in the 2 leagues and getting together with the coworkers a couple times a year is plenty of poker for me. And but I do have fun with it, and hope that I can spend more time with it as I have more free time as the kids get older or whatever too. So that's pretty much my goal, is to have fun and not lose too much. And it's a good hobby. So, and it keeps my brain thinking. There's so much stuff going on all the time with every hand being a little bit different. So it helps with that focus and thinking. And I like the problem solving kind of thing with that, and puzzles and that kind of stuff, and poker fits right in that. So,
well, thanks for joining us once again for the Rec Poker Podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Rec Poker. We got a Facebook group. There's also a page, but we really use the group, so check that out. More than anything else, you can get all of the past episodes and the current episodes and all the descriptions at the Running Aces website. You go to runaces.com/recpoker, and you can get everything you want to know out there. You can figure out how to get a hold of me if you want to as well. And another plug for All In for Africa, Saturday, October 28th at Running Aces. Going to be a great time. If you want to be a bounty, or if you want to donate a prize, please get in touch with me soon, and we will make that happen. All right, thanks everybody.